got the United States, California, Cyprus. My goodness. Oh, Rome.
Wonderful.
It's lovely. Cool. I think you can probably slowly get going, and I'll let people in as they start.
Well, welcome everyone. It is wonderful to be connecting to you from the heartlands. I'm back from a short break and so ready to roll my sleeves up and get involved in all the challenges that are involved in running a project of this nature on the front line of new paradigm conservation today. And I was very pleased when Margot and I looked at what could I share with you in terms of masterclass training, in terms of the 13 laws of Lionhearted leadership. It was clear that what we need more now than ever of all the laws that are relevant right now is radiance. I think, you know, the world has slumped into a deep depression, understandably, given the state of lockdown that we've all experienced, and the threats, the sense that life is being threatened, our vitality, our futures, the economies, all the issues have become really highlighted. And there's a deep sense of entrenched fear and indeed depression. And so the law of radiance is more called for than ever before. So the plan for today in the masterclass is I'm going to share with you how this all began, this project began. I think pretty much all of you know the story, but how did that translate into a training that I'm calling Lionhearted Leadership Training? So I'll share that with you. And then why is that relevant to our times like never before? And then I'm going to be showing you a technique to ignite the lion heart and work with this law of radiance. Together, we're going to be using that technique to clear depression, both within ourselves and globally. Now, and then before we're done, I'm going to give you some homework to do the same once you get home. But I'd like you, as I go along, to be as interactive as possible. Any questions that you may have, get them going in the feed, and so that I can respond to them. But what's really exciting about our masterclass today is that we have friends and supporters and unknown people as well joining us from around the world. And we have participants in the Lionhearted Leadership Training. So we are going to encourage participants to give us their feedback if they'd like to, so that it really is an all-round engagement as to how do we go forward together in these extraordinary times. Now, it just so happens, I don't always plan these things this way, but the universe plans with me always, with the white lions, as I hope you know, being star lion consciousness. They are cosmic. They are luminous luminaries. And so when you work with them in this training, it is all about the laws of light, the fundamental laws of life. So Margot and I chose a date, and then of course, voila, hey presto, today is the new moon. But it's a very special new moon because it's this specific new moon's positioning in Pisces is conjuncting with Venus. So it's an incredible blessing of love for everyone present. And then in Pisces is higher consciousness, the great consciousness from the source flowing through the full moon. And I trust you know that you can work very powerfully with the cycles of the moon as you honor all these cosmic luminaries, and the moon being one, because the moon reflects back the light of the sun. So if you intend upon this day and every new moon, and you track your intention into the full moon, it's a very ancient way of working with natural cycles and seeing how this process of illumination can achieve very clear outcomes. So I'm going to invite you right now to set an intention for this new moon, which is blessed by Venus, the full power of love and beauty at this moment, where our intention is to move from any form of darkness or heaviness or depression into radiance. And so take a moment, you'll see that the great founding lion who with the help of supporters and people dear to me, we managed to return from imprisonment into the wild where he roamed free. Mandla, present, is with you as you set an intention now. And I'm going to take a moment of silence for you to set that intention in your life. Set the intention now with the new moon, what you would hope to see with love and beauty blessing your intention, what you would hope to have achieved in 2 weeks' time at the full moon. Let's take a full minute of envisioning. So I'm taking us out of that visioning, but we can return to it in our closing. And you'll find that you'll be able to really enhance your intention setting by the time we've had our hour together. So how did this all begin? I know you all know that I was rescued in the middle of the Timbavati wilderness by a grandmother who was a medicine woman trained in the way of the lions, who walked through this angry pride of lions with a baby strapped to her back and came to my rescue. And it was her, Maria, the Black Madonna, who really showed me what lion-heartedness is about. Remember that when I asked her, how did she do that? How did she calm this wild pride of lions? She said, love and respect. That is all that nature requires. And if you treat nature with love and respect, you will always be protected. Now, this law of radiance that we're going to be looking at today, the 5th law of Lionhearted leadership, is all about protection. How do you protect yourself? How do you protect your health? How do you protect the planet? How do you protect your mental as well as physical health? It's about shielding and how the relationship between radiance and shielding protects your lion heart. So it goes back in my training to that night where a humble grandmother walked through a pride of lions who were intent on teaching us a lesson, and she calmed them and they did not harm her. The most radiant example of lion-hearted leadership. Remember, the definition of lion-heartedness is that quality of fearlessness inspired by love and respect for the natural world that enables us to transform our human world. It makes us unstoppable. So this law of radiance is deeply connected to lion-heartedness. But how do we access it in a time of deep stress, global trauma, collective facing the unknown and actually facing what is clearly going to be a quantum shift in many ways, where the familiar is going to be transformed, and we cannot predict, you know, if economies crash, it has knock-on effects. But then the question is, were those economies founded on true principles in the first place? Or is there, in fact, an invitation to establish a sacred economic principle that serves our earth in a way that ultimately restores health and ensures continuity and honors life? So that's where we are right now. So what I would like to share with you, based on that initiation that took place for me and ignited my lion heart, is obviously that message from Maria inspired my life ever since, and all the bold, foolhardy, you might say, actions that I took that challenged governments, that challenged the paradigm, that succeeded in raising really very significant funds for a cause that had seemed very obscure, that enabled me to secure vast tracts of land to ensure that the white lions, these luminous beings, could roam back on their sacred heartlands. All of that was ignited by this lion-hearted quality that I recognized in this grandmother, and that I'm sharing with you now, because I believe it's incredibly relevant. So when I started working with the lions and their training in lion-hearted leadership, I formalized it in this book. But what I identified is that there are two traditions of lion leadership throughout humanity's history. The one is the tradition that had been reignited in me by Maria, and I'll come back to that in a moment. But the other tradition is a tradition I would call the Hercules model. Now, we all know Hercules. Hercules is supposedly the great hero figure who, who slayed the lion with his bare hands. But what most of us forget about the Hercules story is that this is all about ego. In his early years, Hercules was so egotistical that he actually destabilized. He became, he had these fits of madness. So his ego would swing from grandiose to a sense of lack of self-importance, back to a sense of complete grandiose tyranny, if you like. He had these ego swings, and as a consequence, he had fits of madness, and he killed the ones he loved. He killed his wife and his children. So the whole story about the labors of Hercules are his efforts to restore balance in his life. Okay, that's the Hercules myth. Now, what I tracked back through history is that this is in fact the myth that most leadership has followed in humanity. It's all about ego. It's all about supremacy. And it's as a consequence of this ego, it has gone very much out of balance. And as a consequence of that, this whole consumerist model is based on consumption as opposed to serving our earth. Now that is the other model of lion leadership that we could say starts with Maria walking at the risk of her own life to save me in the wilderness. So it's an understanding of pure lion-heartedness. And if you track that tradition back in history, you would have an example in Androcles. Now, I'm assuming everyone knows the Hercules tradition. I just summarized it briefly. Funnily enough, less people know about Androcles, even though he's a key figure in history and documented in the New Testament. Androcles, I'm just reminding you now, was a herdsman who walked in the mountains looking after animals. And then he discovered a lion in a cave who was growling at him because this lion had a thorn in its paw. Now, instead of running away, Androcles stepped into the cave and assisted the lion by taking the thorn out of his paw, and the lion didn't harm him. Now, do you remember the rest of the story? The amazing rest of the story is that he was later captured by the Romans, and he was thrown into the Colosseum and forced, as they did it in those days, as a slave to fight against a starving animal, which turned out to be the same lion he had saved. And this lion refused to kill him. And the emperor at that time then declared that Androcles was free and the lion was free. So the amazing thing about the story is that there were actual eyewitnesses, and it's been documented by some historians at the time, who recount Androcles and the lion walking the streets of Rome with people throwing flowers at their feet. So those two traditions essentially helped me define Lionhearted leadership, the one that is required of us today, as opposed to the one that dominated throughout history, which was all about self-service. The one that is required of us today is about service and the true lion heart, that quality of fearlessness inspired by love and respect for the natural world that enables us to transform our human world. It makes us unstoppable. Now, if we go to the fifth law of Lionhearted leadership, that story of Androcles is a very good example of how the fifth law works. There, he had a choice. There was this lion growling at him, and he had a choice to run away or to go into the cave. Now, I mean, his life was absolutely at risk. There's no doubt about that. You know, an injured animal cornered is the most endangered animal, let alone the fact that this was an apex predator. But what he clearly did was he aligned with the creative source in love and respect, and he came in service to this great being who recognized that heart in him, and not only refused to harm him, but there was this deep alliance. In the Lionhearted leadership training, you'll find the lion words everywhere. So there was this deep alliance established between man and lion that later saved his life when he was in the Colosseum. Now, that is the nature of this fifth law of radiance. When you work with it, you are in effect drawing the power from source. All the laws of Lionhearted leadership are a reminder that you are coming back into alignment. Another of those words. You're coming back into alignment with source. So instead of having this ego swing that the Herculean tradition does, if you're on the path of ego and the path of consumption and, you know, supremacy, that lion path that has done so much damage to our earth, remembering that all leaders want to be lion-like. They all claim to be lion-like. What is important in this training is to recognize which tradition you belong to, because the tradition of Hercules wants to be lion-like, wants, and therefore takes consumption. In that tradition, Hercules takes the heart of the lion and brings it back, you know, as a trophy, wearing the the actual mane of the lion around his neck. And the king at that time tells him, keep out of the castle gates. You're an absolute mess. I don't want you here. Now you go out and do the next labor because you haven't learned the lesson. This isn't about taking. This is about being the lion. Okay? So reminding us that the Hercules tradition is the one of ego, which admittedly we all have to some extent. We have to work with our egos. Okay? And we need to bring our egos into alignment with our true selves. So that's the core of Lionhearted leadership. So the way that you can visualize that, I'm going to ask Margot to assist us by calling up one of the tools I use in this training. We call it a polarity chart, and we have a polarity chart for all of these laws. And what it does is it just helps you remember that when you're working in ego consciousness, which is self-service, you would either swing from a victim approach to a tyrant approach. Tyrant and victim are in fact two faces of ego. One is inflated ego, the tyrant, and the other is deflated ego, the victim. But both are ego. So when you do this training of Lionhearted leadership, you come into the middle way, also known as the way of love, light, and truth. If that's sounding slightly lofty, it is. You know, clearly Christ understood this way, the middle way of bringing yourself into alignment with the higher flow from source. So again, you know, pausing for a moment, all these Lionhearted leadership laws presumes that we have a degree of humility in recognizing we are not the final authority. Whatever our cultural or spiritual or religious or scientific beliefs might be, we need to recognize that there is a higher source that flows through all of creation and flows through us too, if we align with it. And so when we go out of alignment, we go into this ego swing, and it's like a seesaw, it's a polarity. Most tyrants, in fact, all tyrants, easily swing back into victim consciousness, complaining that the world is attacking them. Some of the most dangerous people I've dealt with, and I'm sure you know that I deal with the canned lion, captive lion industry, which kills for a living. You know, they kill lions who are in cages, lovingly having habituated to humans. But in some cases, these people that I have opposed actually have murder dockets opened against them. So I'm saying I've dealt with some very dangerous individuals, but you'll find that they are tyrannical, of course, because they fit into the killing mode, but they will so easily swing into the poor me mode. So, you know, blaming the world for all that they've done and living in cages with security fencing and behind bars, themselves in a cage, because they're so terrified of life. So if we're looking at this law of radiance here, just take a moment to look at the victim approach and the tyrant approach. These are ways in which, when we fall prey to this whole Hercules tradition that all of us are in to some extent, all of us are locked into consumerism, we tend to swing between those two extremes, and it helps you understand what those extremes look like. But when you come into alignment with this fifth law of radiance, then you can feel that quality of being true to yourself. I'm just going to read those alignment words. You feel courageous, you feel generous, you feel decisive, animated, resilient, you emanating light, you magnifying radiance in others. You're activating this protective force field. It's literally an energy field or biofield that radiates from you, and it dissipates negative energy. You're looking at ways of retaining light and supporting life. You glow with inner strength. You align with a higher light. You igniting light in others. You revitalizing others. You shining your light. I can go on, but you can see this is the lion quality, the leonine quality that radiates. It radiates in all of us. So the training helps us access that and direct it out in the world. So we're going to go on to experience that what I would call a sacred practice. So in this training that we do at our academy on site with the lions, nothing can be better, but that's advanced training. And as you know, in these days of COVID, no one's traveling. But if you were to come to the academy, you would go into advanced training in the presence of the lions. But in the meantime, and in preparation for advanced training, we have the online training, which is very demanding in its own way and allows you to activate all these laws of the lions within you in a way that supports your everyday life and whatever you're doing in life. And we will go on to a sacred practice to help you with that. So true lion-hearted leaders emanate inner strength and radiance, thus strengthening and brightening the world of others. So what makes us avoid this radiance? Why do we, if this has all these benefits, clearly, even as I read these words, we can all feel how invigorated and enlightened we are. How is it that we are being eclipsed and, being diminished and being shut down and shrinking? Well, a lot of it has to do with our own sense of self-worth and the fact that a lot of the structures that we find ourselves in are not supportive of life. They are actually life-denying. And sadly, a lot of that can be said of our orthodox and traditional educational systems, our monetary systems, our governing systems, our banking systems, all these systems that are part of the Herculean model that is built on exploitation, on killing our loved ones, in this case, killing our earth and killing nature and killing all that is vital and important to us. We are doing ourselves the ultimate disservice when we buy into the old paradigm that is required to be changed at this time. So I think the key in the midst of these challenging times is to remember that there is a higher plan taking place. My work with the lions every day reminds me there is a higher plan taking place. It's difficult to remember that when you're locked into the consumerist model, but I'm inviting you to remember that. Once you remember that, you recognize that in fact, this is an initiation for humanity required. It is a required initiation for us to recognize that the paradigm has to shift. The monetary system has to shift. It has to come from one that exploits and destroys our planet to one that serves our planet. In other words, it has to move from the Herculean paradigm to the Androcean paradigm. And it helps us to know that there is such a paradigm. We've largely forgotten it, but the white lions are reminding us that that is the true leadership model and that it's being birthed in our extraordinary times. In fact, lion-hearted leadership is being birthed right now. It's being forged through the astrology of our times, through these initiatory events that are absolutely held by the astrological configurations that are prophetic. We don't have time to go into it, but believe me, in my work with the Lions, I'm consulting advanced astrologers at all times to help me understand what these amazing luminaries are doing on Earth as they are restoring the true plan of governance on our planet. And our role as individuals with lion hearts being reactivated is to come into alignment with what the white lions are doing for our planet anyway. I hope there are questions coming up. I'm sure Margot's tracking them. But that's really setting the scene of how I came to this model of Lionhearted leadership and how it was shown to me that it is fundamental to our times. It's more than any other model of leadership today, but it's in its emergence. So this isn't a mass training yet. It's not a mass training yet. This is for the advanced guard who have hearts that are bursting to be opened. And the rest of the ignition for humanity will follow this. You are in the advanced guard. You are brave enough, and therefore you are listening to your lion heart to be doing this training. And I'm just watching time, Margot, because I'd love to hear people's questions. Let's get some questions before I go on to a technique that will assist us to work with this incredible law of the fifth law, which is the law of protection. How do you protect your lion heart in doing this work? Are there questions that you can feed my way, Margot, around that? And we can otherwise leave some questions to the end.
Yes, so I do encourage everybody to post their questions. I've been trying to watch. There's a question from Laura that I think relates to this. She asks if you could please explain the power and significance of the number 22, the sacred number 22 in the Griffin Mpenvu practice. I think that relates to radiance.
Well, I don't want to divert us too much, but when you work at an advanced level with Lionhearted leadership training, you recognize that numerology and astrology is a sacred system. And the lions have a sacred numerology. So the number 5 is a lion number. Why? Because it is the number, the stellar number. 4 is the number of the earth. 5 is the number when the 4 corners of the earth come together in the 5th principle, the stellar principle. So if you want to visualize that, it's like a cross with the 4 corners of the earth. You know, your experience of being earthbound is time and space. But when you get into space-time, that is at the center of the cross. And of course, that is also the Christos consciousness, the crucifixion of coming into unification at the center. So that's the number 5 and how that relates to the star lion's ability to take us from earth consciousness into star consciousness. 22 it's a sacred lion number, but I think it will divert us from radiance. So I don't want to get into the depth of it, but it absolutely is one of the sacred numbers, and it links to that moment when the sun touches the heart of the Leo constellation in the heavens. That happens on the 22nd of the Lion month every year. And it's one of those luminous moments when spectacular things happen on Earth. White lions are born through this portal, or in some cases, they actually ascend to the heavens through this portal. What other questions?
Ed shared a very interesting question. Can you tell us about the radiance in the new temple that you are building?
Okay. Quick sharing with everyone. That's a nice question, which goes into my, which goes into my life currently, but I think it's relevant for everyone. Last year began with a bang, I think, for all of us before lockdown, but it was literal in White Line territories. At the beginning of the year was a lightning strike out of nowhere, and it struck my cottage in the middle of the heartland. Now, it just so happened I was in the middle of prayer, a peace prayer for humanity, with our they called Hosis, which is the king of this region. We were praying for peace, and this lightning strike happened. I could have felt that it was an absolute disaster, and of course it was a shock. But ultimately, that experience was a meltdown in order to reconfigure and start again in a much higher way. So the way that I look at it now was that it was an enlightening. I think that relates more to the 13th law, which is from elimination to illumination. But that 13th law, which is zero, it eliminates dead wood in order to allow the phoenix to rise. So that law is very closely related to radiance, obviously, and it helps you clear anything that does not serve you from your life. But it's a much more radical expression of these laws. Now, Ed, to answer your question, what about the temple? Well, I suppose I could have left the cottage in a heap of ash, but instead what came to me is that I've been wanting to build a temple in the White Line heartlands ever since I arrived here, because this is an ancient sacred site that goes back to primordial times, and it actually aligns with Egypt. I'm sure many of you know that by now. So it's considered by many to be the first sacred site on the planet, because that's where the white lions originate. So what am I going to do? Am I going to rebuild my cottage? No. I decided that was, what was in my cottage, as it turns out, was literally hundreds of sacred objects that had been gifted to me by medicine people from around the globe, from spiritual leaders like Desmond Tutu, Nelson Mandela, and a library of thousands of books. I think it was 2,500 books on lions, the Lion Library. All of that was like an offering to nature. So it was clear to me, actually, the cottage was a temple waiting to happen, and this was a sacred fire. I don't know if you know, but in many traditions, you commit, you do a sacred fire to reestablish connection with nature. And that's what this lightning strike had achieved. So during COVID, for the whole of last year, what we did during lockdown was that the entire team, who otherwise we would have had to retrench because their jobs were non-functional, most of them are related to, welcoming guests in our project, and we would have had to fire our chef and a whole lot of our team. So instead of doing that, everyone rolled up their sleeves and they built a temple. But it is a radiant temple to the 13 laws of Lionhearted leadership. And these laws are, honoring nature in a way that any advanced civilization would do. Why does our civilization not honor nature? It's insane. So here in the heartland, this temple is vast. There are obviously the 13 laws, but these are monolithic king crystal standing rocks in the middle of White Line territories. So Margot, in fact, I think is going to call up a picture, if you can, Margot, of the temple for everyone to see. So I'm not just telling you stories. Well, I'll keep going and see if you can find that. You could even, if you find the little video of how we erected this, it's a 1,000-year-old tree that had died and been eroded over hundreds of years. And that is the center of the temple, kind of the Madonna holding the 13th law from elimination to illumination. Yeah, so what other questions? We'll definitely come back for the picture of the temple when we have a chance.
Yes, so I was just, while I'm looking for that picture, Wendy had a great question about how does the law of radiance relate to protection? And if you enact the law of radiance, how is that better protecting you? So.
Yes, so that's a fundamental question, Wendy. You know, when we feel small and defeated, you can actually feel a shrinkage of your auric field. But when we radiate, we create an environment that ultimately protects us. Now, I can't assure you that you won't attract jealousy when you radiate. You attract support and you attract jealousy. But that doesn't mean that you should minimize your true radiant self. When we work with this law of radiance, you're actually drawing solar power into your chakras, and it radiates protection for your health, obviously. But I think, let me just read you something on how it protects, how it literally, this is advanced training, so it's difficult to summarize it briefly, but remembering that I've gone into a lot of dangerous places, and I have had death threats in the early days as well, when I started threatening this industry, and I'm still shaking, if you like, I'm rattling cages, human cages in Parliament in various situations. The way that I do that before I go into that situation is I do a sacred practice of the kind that we train in. And it fills you with a sense of the presence of, call it the Christos, call it the divine. That is your protection. That is how it creates a field of protection around you. You are not relying on yourself, your little self, to address dangerous or threatening or depressing situations. You are drawing on a higher power through the sun, the solar power, to the source of creation. And so let me just read you a quick paragraph or two, because this has to do with advanced training, when you literally in this training can shift dark and dangerous forces out of environments. We're going to do a little visualization of that together, so you can really feel it. But I'm saying here, when I describe this, dangerous, aggressive forces that you will naturally attract as you become more effective will become fertile opportunities to grow and embody your golden lion heart consciousness and shine even brighter. So what happens in this training is, indeed, you do attract jealousy, you do attract envy and people who would like to see you fail. They're going to be there anyway. You also attract those of true heart, and you create these alliances, this whole network of light that is emanating and gaining momentum in these very dense times. you actually work consciously with protection practices in the training. But in the most simple way, to say that when you radiate light, you are working with the highest creative source. So it is not you ultimately who is protecting yourself. You're working with that shielding. And of course, in Lionhearted Leadership Training, we call in our Star Lion Guide to overlight us and to, to amplify our lion heart before we go into any dangerous situation.
Great. So another question from Yvonne. It's quite a long text. I'm just going to, apologies if I summarize this incorrectly, but I'm just going to try and summarize it. She says that she's been given a few signs in the past about what she should be doing. Basically, it's inspired a big love of cats and nature for her. So how can she find the courage to take the messages that she's been given and actually turn that into action?
So it's important for us to remember that each of us has a unique destiny. That is the fundamental training of Lionhearted Leadership. If you'd like to see it as the rays of a magnificent lion who is sun-like, who is the sun. Each of us is like the ray, a sun ray radiating out from the central source. We each have a unique role to play, and ultimately, if we were to reevaluate our lives, what light have we left on the planet? So, Yvonne, I mean, you clearly have a role to play with big cats, and the encouragement is to do something that makes a difference for them. I mean, you will know what that is uniquely. You start with the first law of Lionhearted Leadership, which is origination. How do you originate? What makes you original? You're not going to walk in anyone else's footsteps, but with origination, you acknowledge those who have gone before you. So you might say in your work, it was inspired by Linda Tucker's work, but I'm going to be, and then I'm not going to put anything in your head. You will know, heart and head in alignment, what makes you unique. You're not, no person needs to copy anyone else. It is a unique paw print. You are here with a unique purpose, but part of this training is to acknowledge those who have walked before you, your teachers, your guides, where you got your inspiration, and then you define what is my unique role, and you will know it. I'm not going to tell you what it is.
Great. And I think related to that actually is two questions from Joe and Tiffany, which I think are quite similar. So the question from Joe is, how do we radiate in lockdown with curfews? How do we achieve that balance between going within and shining? And Tiffany's question was, what is the best way to tune into the white line's frequency or their radiance? And so I think that they'll probably have the same answer.
From one to the other. Yeah, so how do you radiate? I mean, this is part of the initiation. You are in lockdown. You are being forced to experience captivity, bearing in mind that that is how the Herculean model has treated our world. Animals are highly sensitized. They are the divine in different forms. And the white lions are the closest expression of divinity in nature. And yet they've been encaged, they've been tortured, imprisoned. Okay, we're not going there, except to say we as humanity have experienced an incarceration globally. So what is that inviting us to understand? That we have radiance within us when we connect with the source. Now, obviously, the best way to connect with your radiance is to be in nature. And to a large extent, we've been deprived of that kind of access. So what that's doing is actually heightening for us a recognition of how important nature is. If that is one of the outcomes of this global initiation, that is vast, for humanity to recognize that our life force, our vitality, our health, our everything is dependent on nature. Isn't that a huge consciousness shift? So I think, though, Joe, you were asking that from an individual point of view. How do you do it? Because obviously it's so easy to sink into depression. Let us, in our sacred practice that we're going to do together, you will see how to do that. I'm going to show everyone a technique that works highly effectively in extending our radiance when we feel deeply depleted and downhearted, heavy, dense, gloomy. Okay, so we'll come to that. Tiffany's question, how do we access the white lions? Let's hear that again. Right.
Yes, it was what's the best way to tune into the white lion's frequency or radiance?
Yeah, so I mean, all these laws are tuning into the white lion's frequency and radiance. These are the laws of the white lions, bearing in mind that the white lions are the tip of the pyramid of life. They are the apex. They are the capstone of the pyramid. They are the spiritual king of kings of the ecosystem. So if we're tapping into them, we're tapping into pure divinity. We're tapping into the blueprint. We're tapping into the origin of what leadership truly looks like. So Maria, this incredible medicine woman who rescued me, and we're saying the Androcles tradition, he was tapping in to that consciousness that is the white lion. So really, I mean, the simple answer to that is to do this training, because I show you step by step different ways of tapping into the laws of nature, who the white lions are the great governors of. If we want to be leaders, we need to govern our planet in a way that is truly enlightened. And that is who the white lions are. Right.
Wait, should we do maybe one more question before we move on to the practice? So another beautiful question from Sylvia. How do you envision a world would look like with humanity living in radiance?
What a beautiful question. Wow. I'm actually going to invite all of us to visualize that world, and let's do that as our closing, because we need to visualize what a future looks like with humanity living in radiance. Because when we visualize that with our sacred site, and in fact, Margot, I think this is before we go on to our technique that I'm going to share with everyone, I'd like to share the founding sacred practice technique that I use in Lionhearted Leadership. Truth that is absolute. We're talking about the original concepts of pure radiance, which we are emanating when we do the sacred practice. And I'm going to answer Sylvia's question in a moment. When we do that sacred practice, we start to see with sacred sight. And when we start to see with sacred sight, we start to see the world as a sacred site instead of seeing it as a dump heap, right? So that will help us once we've just had a look at that. And then I'll show you a technique. Then we can all visualize what the world will look like when we're working with radiance. Can you source it, Margot? I've been very demanding. I'm asking you to track things in your archives.
That's absolutely fine. There we go.
The white lions have inspired a simple but very powerful sacred practice, which will help you physically align with Source, igniting your heart so as to embody lionheartedness. At the center of the sacred practice is an effective mechanism which is known as the golden trine. Lionheartedness is embodiment as well as enactment. This technique will help reignite your heart center and amplify your radiant biofield, also referred to as your auric field. Whenever you need to reinforce this protective force field, you should reinvoke this technique. You could take a couple of minutes, for instance, to do so before a stressful situation such as a job interview or meeting for conflict resolution, whether business or private. So how do you ignite your lion heart? First of all, by remembering that your heart is the very core of your being, just like the sun is the center of the solar system. Everything, your entire life and well-being revolves around it. If your heart is shut down or not fully functioning, you are not truly living. White lions have a special relationship with the sun. At sunset, they are haloed, and at sunrise, their manes glow as they face the dawn of each new day. Their leadership role is to ignite a flame in the darkness. Our leadership role is to keep that flame alive during the day. This golden trine technique effectively ignites our hearts, allowing the life force or prana to flow back in direct from Source. It helps us embody lionheartedness. There's a 10-minute version and an hour-long version. Frankly, you shouldn't start any day without it. The 10-minute version is sufficient as a daily practice, provided you proceed with the hour-long version on a regular schedule once a week. It's no coincidence that lions are associated with the sun. It's no coincidence that lions are associated with the heart. Nor is it a coincidence that lions are associated with gold, the heart of gold. Under the paw of the winged lion is the peace plan. And of course, he is cast in pure gold. But look at his forehead. What do you see? This is the golden trine. This golden trine technique is created symbolically by stretching your thumb and forefingers joined up high above your head to receive your resources direct from Source. It's a protection mechanism, receiving the sun's golden technologies, which effectively shield not only your own heart, but all that your heart holds dear. This is the threefold technology of gold, direct from the great heart, the very source of creation. Love that is unconditional, light that is eternal, truth that is absolute. When you ignite your lion heart, you start remembering those radiant qualities of real love, of real light, and real truth, which are pure gold. This is the golden technology. Love that is unconditional is molten gold. It warms and unifies. Light that is eternal is alchemical gold. It dissolves darkness and uplifts heaviness. Truth that is absolute is the golden scale. It harmonizes and rebalances. When you work with this threefold technology, you create a golden shield, a force field of love emanating from your heart. Use this threefold technology whenever you need protection. Embodying lionheartedness through this sacred practice helps you naturally enact all the lionhearted leadership laws, especially radiance. as you walk lightly on the planet.
So that's just a brief glimpse of the sacred practice training, but you'll see that this radiance, another way of describing it, is the heart of gold. And it links with the higher mind. And another way of describing the higher mind is that threefold technology that gives you sacred sight, whereby you see the world through a lens that recognizes that creation is sacred and that life is sacred. So I know there are questions, but I'd like to move us into a brief training that will assist you in these challenging times. And not only will it assist you individually, but you'll see how lion people work in prides. There is this incredible link up of hearts, creating a force field around the planet. So let us just get very comfortable, and in your mind's eye, as you close your eyes, just remember that flow from the sun, that threefold technology of love, light, and truth. Love that is unconditional, light that is eternal, truth that is absolute, and bring those technologies down to your heart of gold. You are connecting with the heart of the solar system, the sun, and visualize that sun flowing down from the source through your crown chakra, filling your crown with gold and the stellar plan, all the way down your spine until it ignites your lion heart. Allow it to flow all the way down your spine, all the way down. And if you can, anchor your feet on the earth, recognizing that in English, which is a sacred language, under your feet are the soles of your feet. So your crown to your soul, and drop that light now as a taproot down to the center of the earth, and draw gold from the center of the earth, the womb of Mother Earth, up through this golden taproot to your soles of your feet, through the soles of your feet, up your legs, and then to connect with your spine again. And now connect root to crown. And at the center point of that, the point that brings about unification, unity, focus on your heart chakra, on your heart. Drop down into your heart and begin to breathe with your heart, with that double heartbeat that marks time in your lifetime. The first beat from heaven, the second beat echoing back from earth. Breathe with your heart. And now, as you breathe in the gold of light, the gold of life, the gold of the sun, and breathe out any heaviness, any darkness from your system. Breathe in the gold and breathe out any shadow from your system. Breathe in the gold and breathe out any heaviness, any darkness, any despair, any disenchantment, any disillusionment, any dis-ease, any self-doubt. Just let it out with the out breath. And breathe in the gold of life, the gold from the sun, the gold from the heart of the lion. Now visualize your heart as a broken heart that it truly is, heartbroken, so much to be heartbroken. Visualize it as a chalice that is broken open to receive the gold and fill the chalice that is your heart. Release any sadness, any density in your heart. Just release it out to the ecosystem and breathe in the gold. Breathe in the gold and breathe out any fear, any disenchantment, anything that is holding your heart back from filling those cracks to fulfillment, to overflowing. And continue this cycling and recycling until you are breathing in gold and you are breathing out gold. Actively transfigure any density into light now before you impart it to the ecosystem. Breathe in gold, breathe out heaviness, but now before you impart it to the ecosystem, convert it into light. Remember that the ecosystem is perfectly capable of converting darkness into light. It takes the carbon that you transmit, and with the spark of the sunlight, through photosynthesis, it converts it into oxygen. So now, with your heart overflowing to fulfillment through your lungs, through your veins and arteries of your body, now start breathing with your lungs, right down to the bottom of your solar plexus. Recognize that your lungs are inverted trees of life. They are trunks that split into smaller branches and then smaller branches and then into smaller branches and then leaves and then capillaries and particles and subatomic particles, all breathing with the sparkle of sunlight. Track any dense place in your body, in your lungs and in the greater body, which is now sparkling with the frequency of sunlight. Any density anywhere, and dislodge it and breathe it out, but sparkle it into light before you deliver it into the ecosystem. Your heart is a great transformer. And now that your body is sparkling with sunlight, extend it beyond your borders so that you are radiating with as a light body. And now, as you pulse your heart, that double heartbeat, echo it out now like ripples on a golden pond around the globe, around continents and oceans. But as you do so, track wherever there is a point of light, a lion-hearted leader who is working with light, and unify your field with the force field of this lion-hearted leader. All those present here today, unify our force fields. And now, track Mm. Amplify your force field with the force field of the heart that is emanating out from all our emanations, our lion hearts around the globe. Okay. And with that incredible network vibrating as a pride, an alliance of lion-hearted people. Now, with this great emanation, this great force field, this shield of light, let us be brave enough to track any density on this planet. Just feel any density. Go to any part on the globe that creates distress for you. It may be that you're tracking a place where animals are being tortured, or you're tracking a dense place, like a place where there's an abattoir, or a place where animals are held in a circus, or a place where children are being brutalized. Allow yourself now, with this incredible courage that is emanating from your golden heart, that is reinforced by all those lion hearts around the planet, all those present here today, and others we will bring in a moment. Just let us work with those present here today. Be brave enough to track a dense place on the planet. And you can feel, as you track that density, it immediately feels like it wants to break into your force field. It is so dense and so heavy. Okay. But you are working with the source of light, the source of love, light, and truth on the planet. So now, with your brave heart, your lion heart, emanate light into that density on the globe. Don't question it with your brain. Don't think about it. You are using your heart as a golden compass, a golden shielding technology, and just bring in the darkness into your heart, as you have been doing. Recycle it and emanate out, sparkle it out back into that same place where you felt density. Do not question it with your mind, which holds fear. Work with your heart, which holds courage and emanates the gold heart. So continue that wherever you've tracked density, and just continue this cycling and recycling until you no longer feel density. Just keep it going. Bring it into your heart. Be brave enough to actually bring it into the heart of pure gold, which is connected to source. And if you are faltering, if you suddenly feel fearful, I am now going to extend our force field to the lions who are holding the darkest, densest, cruelest places on the planet. That is why they've allowed themselves to go into these killing camps. That's why they've allowed themselves to go into circuses and dungeons and zoos and dense places around the planet. And they've allowed themselves to go into the hands of perpetrators, killers, because they hold such courage and light that they are great transformers. So let us, as we are an alliance working with light, just reinforce your hearts as you tap into white lions all the way around the globe who are holding points of light. Okay. And again, go back to that place that you felt on the globe that gave you distress, and be brave enough to take that shadow, that darkness, into your lion heart, right into your lion heart of pure gold. Transform it. It's a broken heart, it's heartbroken, but it is filled to overflowing with pure gold, and it is connected to source. And now take it, meld it there, forge it there in the molten gold that exists in your heart, and breathe it out, sparkle it back. And you can keep that going. It's a huge process. You are very brave to be doing this, but you are supported by brave-hearted people around the planet and the true lions of light who hold and emanate pure light. Keep that going until that place of density emanates back to you as a place of light. By divine order, through the power of love, we call upon the highest beings of light. Those star lion beings who exist in our times to assist us to transform our planet and to move out anything that does not serve the great plan of love, light, and truth. And so in this space, as we've done this work, let's visualize what life is like when humanity is radiating. We visualize that we can speak to the other inhabitants of our planet through our hearts. We can communicate with all of nature who responds lovingly in return. Nature has always given us unconditional giftings. It's given us the sparkling of fresh water, the sparkling of fresh air, the sparkling of loving food to restore us, because in nature, every species gives. So visualize when we radiate with our hearts, we are part of the ecosystem of life, where we can hear the echo of the lions roaring back. We can hear nature's message. We can join nature in the celebration that it is to be truly alive, and in the celebration that it is to know there is continuity of life on this planet, of all species of which we are one. And we can celebrate the health in the waters, and we can celebrate the health in the oceans and in the land. And we can radiate and enjoy the radiance of others around us and not feel that we have to appropriate it or feel that we are less than because someone else is radiating. We can celebrate our pride radiating together. We can celebrate what it truly is to be alive at this moment. And all flows from that radiance. This is the invitation of the white lions to us, humanity, to humankind, to remember what it is to be kind. And so let us come back into our present forms. That was a big piece of work, everyone. I don't know about you, but my whole body was really feeling almost overwhelmed by that task. But then it came back to me. The radiance came back into my body as we connected. I hope you all felt that, and that wasn't too taxing on you, because that was a really big piece of work. Can I just have some feedback from anyone who'd like to give feedback? Are you feeling encouraged by that, or are you feeling intimidated by that?
Susan here.
Yeah, Susan.
I thought it was a very, very, very powerful experience. And in many ways, I've tried to do something like that, but this really brings it down to the white lions. I spent time with the white lions with you. And I just feel like I'm shining. So yes, I feel, and I've lived through a war in Lebanon, in Nigeria. There were issues there, where there were lots of tribes fighting with each other. So I know I've experienced
danger,
dense energy. And so yes, thank you so much. This is a really powerful experience.
I am so grateful because I felt I'd pushed it a bit far. I mean, that's part of the advanced training, but you know, this is what the lions are doing all the time. They're transforming density into light. And if we draw on them, they are there to be drawn on. They want to fill us with light. That's their greater mission. And I call it a transmission because they're transmitting direct from source, you know, calling upon humanity to remember that we are potentially light beings. We've forgotten our light. And I mean, we're going through this incredibly dense, dark initiation, but that is the training. And so, I mean, it's been a privilege to be able to do it with you. You know, it's the sort of thing, as I say, I do with the advanced trainees, but I could feel that that was a piece of work we did there on the planet, all of us united, and we were working with the lions working through us. I know it was Tiffany who asked, how do we tap into them? We were tapping into them there. Well done, everyone.
Beautiful.
My gosh, it's such a pity our time is running out, but I'm going to give you homework that is nothing. I mean, it's just remember what we achieved there, and then do this as a piece of homework specifically for you. I'm so encouraged that this actually did work, because I took a risk there. It was big. I could feel I was tapping into a really, I mean, awful place where horrible things are going on. But you do not get rational about this, because the rational mind can't deal with the horrors. It's much bigger than the rational mind. We're working with this unified force of love that is the greatest force. Yeah, gosh. Sure, I've had wonderful feedback. Thank you. The homework I've got for you, which can really flow from that technique, is that with this still fresh in your mind, and most importantly, when I say mind, I'm talking about the higher mind here, but you know, with your hearts full with this fulfillment of the gold that flows from source and through the lions, who in my understanding are sunlight incarnate. There's virtually no difference between physical form and soul. They are soul embodied. They radiate with pure solar light. So just have them, call on them. They are really ready for you to call on them. With that in mind, the next time you track anything in your life that diminishes you or makes you shrink or feel threatened in any way, just, you know, do the sacred practice, ideally in nature, but create a safe space for yourself to actually visualize taking that density that has threatened you and take it into your heart of gold, the lion heart, and just transform it alchemically. I mean, we are much more than our rational minds, and so much of this relies on our embodiment of lion-heartedness. There's a role for our minds. We get back to directing our mind through our lion heart, through that alignment. But for now, when you work with the law of radiance, it's fundamentally the emanation of the golden heart. So that's our homework. The next thing that makes us shrink or feel threatened or less than your radiant self, don't rationalize it. Just do this technique. And by all means, draw on the lions who are truly ready to assist you. Should we do Margot, let's just share a couple of things from everyone, just read out some of the messages. And it was such a pleasure to be with you today. You know, it's so exciting to have members of the public and our extended support base with trainees who are going through Lionhearted Leadership online. Some of you may know that this is something I've been working on for decades, but it was the perfect timing to get it out to the world during COVID. And of course, being Lionhearted Leadership Training, I chose the timing very strategically. So it was launched on the 5th of July, which is that moment of the year. We've spoken about some of the other sacred dates, but the 5th of July is that moment when the sun aligns with Sirius. And this year it was particularly powerful because it was an eclipse, which means sun, moon, star, and earth are all in alignment. So there could not have been a greater moment for launching Lionhearted Leadership online in the midst of the COVID crisis. Now, Margot, who you've all met and know, who heads up our marketing team, and the web designer and those who'd been involved in this training were all ready to launch it. And we literally launched it like a rocket. We counted down from 100 to 1 and launched it at 12 o'clock to exactly align with that cosmic event. And that's what my life is like with the Lions. Everything I do, I bear in mind that we're not, that we are part of a much greater plan. So those who are working on the online training have the benefit of that kind of alignment, that force behind it. So I do invite you, if you are feeling less than yourself, understandably through this global intense time, it is really an invitation from me to do the online training, and thereafter, if you'd like to go into advanced training, of course, then that's to meet the lions themselves in the heart of their sacred natural site. So Margot, we were just going to close with a few comments, I think. And then I look forward to a future webinar so I can connect with you again. It's greatly heartening for me to know that that was a success, because I know that you will be doing this work and creating radiance wherever you are on the globe. Points of light.
Yeah, we've got some beautiful comments. Colleen, who's one of our current participants of the online training, says, last night I was working with law number 3 of communication. I was starting to feel despair and wondering if I was not truly committed to this important work and the gift I have been given. Thank you from my heart for being with us today. You've assisted me in moving back into the light, the source, the white lions. It's a beautiful comment.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it helps. It just helps to know that when one goes into those moments of self-doubt, you're actually on an ego swing. You're on the deflated ego swing. We all do it, so just when you go into it, recognize that that actually is ego. It's deflated. So you've got to come back into alignment to really feel your radiance, or to really feel all of these laws again, which are not new laws. They're the primary laws of creation. Thanks, Ilse. Thanks, everyone. What else, Margot? Any more comments that we can close with quickly?
Another lovely comment from Linda saying the training helped me during COVID. Definitely a beautiful focus to maintain the light. I think we've been getting a lot of feedback like that, just people who've started this training during this year and just felt themselves reconnecting to source and reconnecting to their own strength, really, through the training. So it has been a big help for many people, I think.
Good. Indeed. Yeah.
The training is truly transformational, says Laurie. So thank you, Laurie. Yeah.
Thank you. I think that was amazing to work with those in training and those in the greater field. And I send you all love, all love. I feel greatly encouraged to continue. Thank you, Margot, too. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.